In this video, I will share 6 important study strategies that will set you up for success for the JLPT Dokkai or reading component. The first 2 strategies will help you improve your overall reading ability and speed in Japanese, and the following 4 strategies will help you be a better test taker. We'll then go through an example test question together and see how these study strategies can lead us to the correct answer faster. The strategies that I introduce in this video can be applied to any level of the JLPT, but this video is specifically tailored to the N2 level, so that will be our main focus. Stay until the end and I will share a bonus study strategy. Hi, my name is Sachi. I am a Japanese language teacher and translator. I have 2 online courses. One teaches you pronunciation and pitch accent in Japanese, called Japanese Phonetics 101, and the other is an occupation-specific Japanese course for flight attendants. I also translate Japanese family registries or koseki for people of Japanese descent. 皆さん、こんにちは。心コミュニケーションズのサチです。今回は日本語能力試験の読解テストの勉強法を6つ英語で紹介し、N2 の過去問を1つ一緒に解いていきたいと思います。では早速始めましょう。Let's begin with a general understanding of the N2. There are 2 components to this test.The language knowledge or 言語知識 component, which tests you on writing, vocabulary, and grammar, the reading or 読解 component, and the listening or 聴解 component. The language knowledge and reading test is 105 minutes long, and the listening test is 50 minutes long. In order to pass the N2, you need to get a minimum of 19 points in each section and a total of at least 90 points out of a possible 180 points.So, your score on the reading component is important, and preparing for the reading section will also help you prepare for the other areas of the test as well. And with that, let's look at the 6 study strategies that will help you get a good score, starting with the first 2 that will improve your overall reading ability. 1. Study grammar, vocabulary, and kanji before and during your reading practice. When you're reading for fun, this can be more of a passive study strategy in which you just make a mental note and leave it at that.But when you're preparing for the JLPT, I definitely recommend more focused study. Using flashcards made of paper or in an app, for example, can make your study more efficient. Either way, study each item in context and study them on a regular basis until you know them pretty well. I recommend using flashcards or actively reviewing your notes for 5 to 30 minutes per day, depending on your schedule, until you feel fairly confident.After that, you can review them less frequently, maybe once a week or once every 2 weeks, depending on how close you are to the test day. 2. Read as much as you can. You may be tired of hearing this one, but it does make a difference. When you're reading for fun, read anything and everything that makes you happy. Maybe sometimes you can read something easy, and other times you can read something more challenging for yourself. Keep it fun so that you can keep it going. When preparing for the test, read mostly test preparation materials.The main reason we want to read as much Japanese as possible is because we want to be familiar with reading Japanese. This reduces the chances of us seeing a lot of kanji and feeling intimidated. It helps us understand how Japanese is written, and it helps us read faster without compromising on comprehension. Especially with longer phrases like なければなりません or ということではありません, the faster you can read them, the more you can save time during the test. Speaking of saving time during the test, number 3.Know how long it takes you to read. While doing practice questions, get a sense of how long it takes you to read. This can help you understand how long it generally takes you to answer different types of questions. While you're at it, make note of which questions are easier for you and which ones are harder. You can use this information to plan out how best to use the limited time you're given on test day. 4. Know the types of questions that get asked. The JLPT has 3 types of questions that are quite common. The main point questions,inference questions, and detail questions. This means you'll likely come across the following questions. 筆者がこの文章で一番言いたいことはどんなことか? These questions ask about the main point or the bigger picture of the text. のはなぜか questions. For example, それは違うのはなぜか? These questions usually include なぜか or どういうことか, and they require you to understand a specific part of the text and be able to infer or deduce information based on it.何を指しているのか? For example, それとは何を指しているのか? These questions ask you about details in the passage, which requires you to link key ideas that are explicitly stated. If you prefer to read the questions before you read the passage, Knowing the exact questions you need to answer helps you skim the text to pinpoint your focus on select key areas, saving you time. If, on the other hand, you prefer not to read the questions in advance in order to make sure that you understand the overall passage and don't miss important information that might get lost if you're simply skimming the text, knowing the types of questions that generally get asked can help you focus your energy while reading. 5. Focus on what is in the passage. This may sound a little bit silly, but it could really help. Don't draw from what you know about the real world and simply focus on what is written in the text itself. So if you're reading a passage about what makes a good boss, or why toys are more popular now than they used to be, or maybe what makes a compelling story, don't think about your personal opinions on these topics. For me at least, it can sometimes be frustrating when I disagree with the author, so I need to remind myself that my opinions don't help me pass the test. 6. Identify the wrong answers. Many of the possible answers for these questions could potentially be correct because they're designed to be tricky. That's part of the reason why you only want to focus on what is in the passage and use process of elimination to get your answer. Cross off the ones that are not correct, and whatever you're left with is your answer. To recap, here are the 6 study strategies that we just talked about. 1. Study grammar, vocabulary, and kanji before and during your reading practice. 2. Read as much as you can. 3. Know how long it takes you to read. 4. Know the types of questions that are frequently asked. 5. Focus only on what is in the passage. 6. Identify the wrong answers. では、過去問をやっていきましょう。Before we even begin reading, we already know the different types of questions that generally get asked, and we know approximately how long it might take us to read this passage. We also know that we don't need to be intimidated by all the kanji we see because we've prepared for this. これはビジネス文書に限ったことではないのだが、何であれ文章を書いていると少しばかり緊張感を覚えるものだ。書きながら頭の中でこんなことを考えている。この書き方でいいのかな？これ、ひどく下手な書き方じゃないだろうか？これでわかるかな？そういう気がしきりにして、ちょっとしたプレッシャーになっている。だからこそ、文章を書くのは苦手だと思っている人もいるのじゃないだろうか。しかし、その逆もまた真である。文章を書く面白さとは、そういうプレッシャーを感じながら、なんとか諸問題をクリアして、一応のものを書き上げることにあるのだ。テレビゲームが楽しいのと同じ理屈である。あれは攻略するのが簡単ではない様々な障害をかわしながら、次々に問題を解決していって、なんとかクリアしていくところが面白いのである。難しいからこそ、うまくやった時に楽しいのだ。文章を書くのもそういうことである。これでいいのかなと一末の不安を抱えながら、なんとか書いていくってことを楽しまなければならない。別の言い方にすると、文章というものは書く人に対してうまく書いてくれと要求してくるのである。なぜなら、文章とは人と人とのコミュニケーションの道具だからだ。この例外は自分だけに分かればいいメモと絶対に他人に見せない日記だけである。それ以外の文章は必ず書く人間の他に読む人間がいて完成されるのだ。そして書いた人の伝えたかったことが読んだ人にちゃんと分かってこそ文章は役を果たしたことになる。Because we've studied kanji, grammar, and vocabulary, we should understand almost all of what is in this passage. We should be pretty familiar with keywords like だからこそ and its variations からこそ and こそ、ながら、しかし and ことになる。Kanji or vocabulary that we may not be familiar with are given to us in 中1 to 中5. If you can't read a specific kanji out loud, but you get a sense of what it means in context, don't worry, that's good enough. All the reading we did to prepare for this test means that we should be able to read long hiragana phrases like いるのじゃないだろうか or なければならない quite quickly without compromising our comprehension. We know we'll likely be asked detail, main idea, and inference questions, but let's take a look at the 3 questions associated with this passage. 1. 筆者は文章を書くときに何がプレッシャーになっていると述べているか。2. そういうことであるとはどういうことか。3. 読む人間がいて完成されるとはどういうことか。We can see that question 1 is a main point question and 2 and 3 are inference questions. Let's answer them one by one. 1、筆者は文章を書くときに何がプレッシャーになっていると述べているか。Our options are 1、このまま最後まで書き上げられるか不安だという気持ち。2、読む人が期待する書き方をしているかという気持ち。3、自分は字を書くのが下手だから嫌だという気持ち。4、書きたいことがうまく書けているかという気持ち。Let's evaluate each possible answer and eliminate the ones that are not correct. 1は違いますね。The author implies fear, but they're not saying this is 文章を書くときにプレッシャーになっている for them. 2は正しいかもしれませんね。The author says これでいいのかなと一末の不安を抱えながら何とか書いていくってことを楽しまなければならない。And文章というものは書く人に対してうまく書いてくれと要求してくるのである。So this makes 2 a promising answer. 3も違いますね。The author says, ひどく下手な書き方じゃないだろうか。But then they say, しかし、その逆もまた真である。And then they continue to talk about what makes writing interesting. 4はどうでしょう？ The author says, これでいいのかなと一末の不安を抱えながら何とか書いていくってことを楽しまなければならない。一末 means ほんの少し。So we know that they're saying 少しの不安を抱えながら楽しむ which puts more weight on having fun while writing. We are left with 2 which is the best answer. では次、2番。そういうことであるとはどういうことか。Our options are 1、様々な障害をクリアしていくことが難しい。2、プレッシャーを忘れ、いろいろ考えるのが楽しい。3、苦労して問題を片付け、課題を仕上げるのが楽しい。4、不安を抱えたままでは問題を解決するのが難しい。Let's look again at the text that comes immediately before そういうことである。テレビゲームが楽しいのと同じ理屈である。あれは攻略するのが簡単ではない様々な障害をかわしながら次々に問題を解決していってなんとかクリアしていくところが面白いのである。難しいからこそうまくやった時に楽しいのだ。文章を書くのもそういうことである。So, which is the best answer? 1は違いますね。The author specifically says クリアしていくところが面白い。2も違いますね。There's nothing in the relevant part of the passage that talks about プレッシャーを忘れていろいろ考える。3は良さそうですね。The author says 次々に問題を解決していってなんとかクリアしていくところが面白いのである。難しいからこそうまくやった時に楽しいのだ。And lastly, 4も違いますね。There's nothing in the relevant part of the passage that talks about 不安を抱えたまま。ということは正しい答えは3番ですね。では、最後の問題、3番。読む人間がいて完成されるとはどういうことか。1、文章の価値を決めるのは読み手の存在だ。2、文章が成立するには読み手の存在が必要だ。3、文章は人に読まれることでより良いものになる。4、文章は読み手の要求に応えることで出来上がる。Initially, it looks like more than one of these answers could be correct, so let's review the relevant part of the passage and determine the best answer through process of elimination. Right before and after 読む人間がいて完成される the author says 別の言い方にすると文章というものは書く人に対してうまく書いてくれと要求してくるのである。なぜなら文章とは人と人とのコミュニケーションの道具だからだ。And they also say書いた人の伝えたかったことが読んだ人にちゃんと分かってこそ文章は役を果たしたことになる。So, based on that, 1は違いますね。The author does not talk about 文章の価値。2は正しいかもしれませんね。Because the author says 読む人間がいて完成される but they do not say 成立する。完成 is completion and 成立 is like establish or approve, so they are similar in meaning, but they are not the same thing. 3も正しいかもしれませんね。The author talks about the value of a text being read, but より良いものになるとは言っていません。4はどうでしょ The author says that 読む人はうまく書いてくれと要求する and also 書いた人の伝えたかったことが読んだ人にちゃんと分かってこそ文章は役を果たしたことになる。This means that the readers have requests and demands from the authors, and a text fulfills its purpose by successfully conveying the message from the author to the reader. Based on our notes, we can safely say that 4 is the best answer. So now you've seen how studying grammar, vocabulary, and kanji before and during your reading practice, reading as much as you can, knowing how long it takes you to read, and knowing the types of questions that generally get asked before you take the test, then focusing on what is in the passage and identifying the wrong answers will prepare you well for the JLPT reading test. And now that we are at the end of the video, here's my bonus strategy. Prepare for the JLPT with peers if you can. Having others at a similar language comprehension level and working towards the same goals as a group where you can all succeed can be a great motivator. You can ask and answer questions with each other, study together, and be accountability buddies. You might also have a friend on test day that can keep you company during break time. For me personally, preparing for the JLPT and taking the test itself has felt pretty lonely, especially because not every language learner's goal is to pass the N2 or N1 levels. And on top of that, there were very few classes held for people at that level. That's why I'm starting an online community called Goukaku Kurabu to help N2 test takers prepare for and pass it with confidence. There will be live calls on Zoom, study tips, example questions, and lots of opportunities to ask and answer questions about grammar and so much more. If this sounds like something you would like to learn more about, join the waitlist which is linked below, and you'll receive updates for when it launches and how to join at a special price. The next JLPT will take place in about 5 months, so now is the perfect time to start preparing for it. If you enjoyed this video, please let me know by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. And as always, if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. I love hearing from you. では、最後までご視聴いただきありがとうございました。また次回お会いしましょう。See you next time!